Our industrial island has begun, and we have a fantastic framework to expand it. And we're going to continue to do that because the very first episode of this little mini series within the big series is actually doing very well indeed. And I'm very pleased about that. So, without further ado, let's start on with part 2. And that rhymed. Hello everybody and welcome back to another episode of the Anno 1800 Beginner's Guide series, and this is the section we're going to be touching on the industrial island and its setup. This is going to be part 2. I anticipate there being around 4 parts for an industrial island because I want to make sure I'm as thorough as possible. There are also some areas I want to address specifically, and that goes back to the previous episode along with questions that I received in the previous episode as well. So let's begin with the questions. The first one that I actually did receive was from Ranty and Daniel, of whom asked a very important one that I didn't actually talk about too much in the previous episode. And that was, and I hope you don't mind that I'm speaking aloud and explaining this because I know it'll definitely help out a lot of other people as well. His question mostly pertained to, you're going to have a lot of ships that are going to be coming to and from with fetch and carry work from this island. Can it get overloaded? Can it get saturated with goods? What really happens? How can you navigate this? Well, there are many different ways of navigating this, first and foremost. So when you're looking for an industrial island to actually work on, that's why I'm saying scouting for a good one with multiple different shorelines are very important. So, for example, over here, we've dedicated that to an oil harbor, of course, but we have a very long one in the front here. Ultimately, the ships are programmed, I say this in air quotes, to go wherever the Grand Trading Post is. So, making a little bit of a deviation here, I'm going to assume by now you guys have the Docklands DLC, but again, if you don't, I will also talk about the events that can transpire if you do not have it, alright? If you do have the Docklands DLC, then make sure you build it relatively close, because the ships kind of default to where this particular building is. This is like the main hub, okay? In my expert campaign, I have built a massive, absolutely massive Docklands territory. No ship uses it. Why? Because they tend to go to this one. It's closer. That's what the game tries to fix, is like cut down a whole bunch of congestion, as it were. But there's nothing to really do about that. The main thing that you can do here, if you do have the Docklands DLC, then you'll notice in the modules, you can build additional piers right over here. And you can either link them up for extra attractiveness. Truth be told, on an industrial island, it's not really going to matter, but you want it to be on this harbor anyway. And this harbor is relatively spacious, so we definitely have enough territory to do this. The only other thing that I would mention is, you see how the Docklands actually has a radius? Well, the radius also impacted by a whole bunch of harbor master items that you can put in here. So later on, you can even optimize your Docklands main wharf to have, for example, passive trade benefits, loading and unloading speeds, all those things. You know, if you're going up against very powerful NPCs, then you want to make sure you have good specialists in here that help out with, you know, the fact that your island's not going to capitulate as easy. But going back to this, you have piers over here that you'll be able to have, you know, multiple of these things. So like we can actually put one over here and one over here. So in total right now, we actually have 4 harbor ports that they can go to. We have the main one here. We have the Docklands main wharf, which does also count as another pier. And we have 2 additional piers. So wherever they're going to be unloading, and they won't take too long for them to get what they need and leave, or drop off what they have and leave. The other thing is that with the Docklands itself, it does come with loading wharfs. And these are additional harbor items that you can couple to these massive... I actually really like these buildings. It's really nice. But the only thing with the loading wharf itself is that you notice it actually has a little area in the front that you can't build anything in. That is the only thing that makes this building a little bit of a problem. So you can, for example, like I'm just pushing it out here just to show you what you can do. You can always do something like this and overlap it like that, and that would work. Okay, just so long as this little section in the middle is not built on, these guys can actually be built. Okay, that's one good thing. And they will help you out a decent amount. Let's go ahead and actually see what it's written. So 50% speed bonus for loading and unloading, all those things are really, really important, especially when you're going to be transporting a lot of stuff en masse. That's why this DLC in particular is one of the ones that broke the game. It's very powerful once you actually get it, optimized and running the way that you want it to. And with ships, it'll make life a hell of a lot easier because essentially you might see them just import for like, I don't know, 30 seconds, they have a full load and they leave. That's essentially what you want. In the event you do not have the Docklands DLC, never fear, you can do something similar, but not to this extent. In the Artisans location, if you go to the medium harbor, you have additional piers right over here. And the cool thing about this is you can literally build it all the way out here, and you don't have to connect it via road, right? We'll do whatever she wants. You can build it out here, and you'll be totally fine. The only thing is, for my eyes, that looks weird, so I would want to, like, for example, build a road to it, but you don't have to, okay? You can go ahead and stack these, for example, if we're needing to transport a whole bunch of stuff. Let's say we actually own Wibbly's Island over there, right? And we want to take some stuff from our industrial island over to that side. We could actually build out here on the other side of the industrial island itself with a whole bunch of additional piers just to make our life a little bit simpler. So we can put 4 piers right over here, and they'll be able to send stuff from the back end as well. They won't have to go through the front. The incentives for this make it so there's not just one port that's overloaded with a lot of ships coming to and from. But at the same time, if you do have the docklands, you won't run into that problem. Okay, they'll just all come over here. If you really work on expanding the docklands at this point, then that is going to be your bread and butter. You really won't have to really rely on these piers. And the position of, for example, Ultramar is perfect because its main harbor area that we're utilizing can reach every single one of our main harbors. Okay, so that is a really good thing. And then the additional of like why this is again for why I did not do this. I tend to not favor putting the timber over here, but for the sake of the guide, I definitely want to reassure you that you can do something like this. You can indeed put sawmills down over here. And just for the hell of it, because we actually have some room in here, I'm going to put 2 down. Okay, I'm going to put these 2 over here. I can even go ahead and put 1 more over here. And the reason why I'm doing this is because they're actually close enough to this power station, so they'll have electricity. So doubling back to my assumption that you have the Docklands DLC at this point, we're going to wait for Captain Tobias to come in. Now, there are multiple different goods that you can put into this thing to actually make it worthwhile to trade with. There's a reason why I mentioned to start playing around with advanced weapons early on, and that is because the ratios of advanced weapons to the stuff that you could use is very high, okay? So we've actually already utilized some, and we're still producing it on Roma, but again, we want to move it over here. Look at the values, 1 to 40, okay? We're getting a full amount of iron and coal into our industrial island with the use of advanced weapons. They're fantastic to not only sell to get yourself out of a bind, but also to actually work up the chain. Yes, we have fish at a legendary exporter. You can choose to keep it like that. Don't worry. It'll stay like that for the long term until you actually replace it with something else. But the difference here is that fish by default is a common level export. So it's not going to be as impactful, nowhere close to this. It's literally going to be a 1-to-1 ratio, even though it is a legendary export, right? But the better and more difficult the item is to produce, the better the return. For example, later on, you can even go so far as to put in steam motors for here. That's insane. You can go ahead and put champagne in here. That's also fantastic. You literally, in my campaigns, I don't even worry about making light bulbs anymore. I import it through this thing. That's how powerful it is. And if you do decide that you want to get mods for Docklands, which definitely are good quality of life enhancements, right? You can essentially get everything in the freaking game imported through this particular building. Everything with mods. In the base game, though, it limits you to what you can and cannot get, all right? So that's going to be that step. We have our sawmills as well. I think we actually do have some wood in here. So what we'll actually do is we'll go ahead and build up these sawmills so we can start off with this. And we also want to talk about food, Okay, because food is going to be important to also be brought over here. Not every single one, but I will tell you, for example, the slaughterhouses are definitely one that we should consider. Okay, the reason for this again, because of the negative attractiveness and the fact that we just do not want it over there on Roma. We don't want our people to have a terrible time with the pollution and the vulgarity, and unfortunately, this building and this production chain is completely vulgar. We don't want it there. So what we can do is we can bring it over here. Do you have to actually optimize it, on the other hand? That is up to you, okay? Because the real optimization behind a slaughterhouse, for example, is just electricity, in my opinion. That being said, we do actually have an item in here. We have this lady of whom increases the productivity of the slaughterhouses and provides us extra goods, being one tallow once every 3 cycles. Now, what that means essentially is every time the building processes 3 tons, that you gain that 1 ton of tallow the moment the third ton is actually produced. So, what we will do in this particular situation is find a spot that we can put another trade union in that's actually going to have electricity. And we have this mine over here. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to get rid of that trade union in favor of this one. Because so far as that only having like electricity connected to it later, I'm fine with that. Okay. I'm not really focused too much on this mine. I want to focus on these ones more. Because one trade union for 4 mines is nutty. Absolutely nutty. So we're going to go ahead and build up this thing once we actually get some timber in here and we are actually producing enough. And we are actually, in the meantime, let me actually double back to, I said actually one many times. Let me double back to the canneries, because the canneries is definitely, at this point, something that you can easily make canned food with. This is one chain, as I mentioned in the artisan guides, that a lot of people dislike. Why? Let's do a little recap. Look at this garbage. It's straight garbage. I hate it. You hate it. We all hate it. Right? Why do we hate it? Because this takes 2 minutes. This takes 2 minutes. This one takes 2 minutes. This one's 1:30. And you need iron. Put that all into one, and this building is atrocious to manage when it comes out. That's why Artisans is like the spot where a lot of people are just like, you know, I'm throwing my hands up in the air. I can't do this. Right? But I will tell you that there are items that you can get to actually completely change the input of a cannery altogether. And the first one is Chef Michel. I have a love-hate relationship with him because, quite frankly, he's an a-hole. Why is he an a-hole? Because he literally dodged me for 43 episodes in my expert campaign. Dodged me completely. I went to Eli's Port. That's where you get him. One of the places you can get him, rather. And I just could not get this guy. So I was trying to find ways of cheesing how to get more canned food for the longest time until I actually found him. Why is he so good? Because he provides a brand new input for the cannery. The new input being, instead of goulash, the building processes pigs. Wait a minute. That's goulash right there. Okay? So the reason why he's so powerful, just because he's not providing us with a productivity boost, that's not the goal here. What he's doing is completely cutting out 3 different buildings. That's a lot of workforce, that's a lot of time wasted, and we don't need this, because there's absolutely no reason in living hell we should ever see goulash ever again. Unless, like, someone random is like, oh, I want some goulash. Do you have any goulash? No, I don't. Try to find it somewhere else. Go to Benta, go to freaking Princess Ching if you want some goulash, or hell, Wibbly probably has it for breakfast every morning. But we don't need that. What he's instead going to do is, for lack of better words, stuff a little pig into a can and provide it to the people. I wish I was kidding, because that's essentially what he's doing. If we go over here to the cannery itself, you'll notice that we still have the iron requirement, but now the goulash has changed to pigs. So we're still processing one every minute and 30 seconds, but do note that with electricity flat, it'll be at 45-second processing time for the cannery here. So we have this going, and we have a fair amount of canned food coming in. So we have 34 canned food. It's not as fast as everything that we had going on Roma. I just need to go over here really quick and prevent her from sinking any of our ships. Thank you very much. Have a great day. Because she probably already attacked one. No, she didn't. I was actually fast enough. So, with the canneries actually working like this, we are also going to as extra goods, again, once every 2 cycles, we're going to get 1 ton of sausages, which this is really good. This is going to help out our slaughterhouses considerably, because now both of these buildings are going to be utilizing pigs, okay? That's one thing to also bear in mind. With more sausages coming in, it actually helps our export going over to Roma, going over to Capua, to Messina, whichever island that you're planning on actually expanding its population for. This is going to help. And imagine when you actually have all these things built up. That is going to be insanity. Absolute insanity. Plus a power station right over here. The only reason it's not getting to every single one of the buildings is because it hasn't been built yet, and we need to actually fix the roads up. The roads are the main issue. We might actually have to bring it over onto this side, actually. So now that we actually have some timber in here, what I'm going to go ahead and do is build up this trade union, because I want to actually build the slaughterhouses now. Like, physically build them. So we're going to go ahead and start from, let's give it like 1 tile spacing in between here. So we'll go ahead and arc down 5. Okay, we'll have 5 slaughterhouses, and we can go ahead and build them probably. Perfect. So these guys are going to go over here to this warehouse. Unfortunately, this poor thing's going to get overloaded, but we can always do this. Go ahead and upgrade it once. Yes, it will probably reach the yellow over here, meaning that there's going to be a little bit of a slowdown in getting the goods, but they can also head over here if, you know, they weren't so lazy. But what we can also do is just check really quick. So this is a minute, right? Minute processing time. Let's put in this lady, and you'll see that all the buildings now are actually highlighted with blue. So with this, it's now at 42-second processing time for some sausages, and that is fantastic to see. If we were to head back to Roma really quick, let's just see how much sausages we actually have left in here, because that's important. We have 322. We also have a lot of pigs over here in storage, so what we should consider doing is actually bringing over some of the pigs that we have left here over to Ultramar so they can process it. And what is this ship doing? It's bringing over clay. That's fine. Where is the escort thing that she wanted this to do? It's over here? Okay, well, I'm gonna set these 2 ships to do it and see what happens. If they sink, they sink. I could care less. So, we have Captain Tobias that's arriving over here. Yeah, he does also tend to go over to the main harbor area over here. It really depends on which area of the map he comes through, but anyway, that's a story for a different time. So we have these working as well, but now, there's one crucial element to this, okay? With industrial islands, you need to have very stable and protected oil routes. And, you know, if you do have the Passage DLC, which relies on the Arctic, later on, if you choose to utilize Arctic gas for an industrial island, which it's not out of the realm of possibility for one to do that, what essentially I'm getting at is it's very difficult to process Arctic gas, but it's easier to actually bring in oil for your power plants, okay? So what we need to do is we always need to start off with a small oil harbor and build yourself some additional depots like these so you can house a whole bunch. So like right here, we actually have 400 oil in here, and that is because there is indeed a route, and I'm pretty sure it might have just left. Let's see, the Sea Sponge, there it is, the Star Shadow 2. Which brought over 400 oil from Fenris. And Fenris, if you recall, is our little island in the New World that's producing oil. I want to caution you, first and foremost, that if you only have one island that's producing oil, be very careful that it doesn't run out. In this particular situation, Fenris is doing incredibly, okay? It's essentially powering or providing oil to 4 islands, to Roma, our capital, to Capua, which is where our farms are, to Andres, which is the neighboring island, and it's now producing oil for Ultramar, okay? That is insane. So, the fact that it's actually capping out here is incredible. We can even go so far as to expand upon the amount of storage capacity that this island can have, and that is the right thing to do, because they're even utilizing the oil here for the farms, right? They're using it to produce fuel. We're going to go ahead and help her out right over there so I don't have to look at her sad eyes anymore. I do love her. I do really like the NPCs. The level 1 NPCs, except for Wibbly, he scares me. But always make sure that you have enough oil going forward, because you don't want to ever run into a situation where you're like, what the heck? Why don't I have electricity over in my industrial island? That's terrible. You don't ever want to see that happen. But thankfully, we actually have a decent route over here. The only problem is we have to actually build one of these power plants and see how much of the oil it's consuming, right? So let's go ahead and build this oil power plant right now. And we're going to see this entire side have electricity. Now, they're going to be working quadruple overtime. These guys at 45 seconds, these guys at 30 seconds, and these guys are at a minute. So we're going to see 30 seconds, 15 seconds, probably somewhere around 25 seconds for this one, okay? The main thing that we're going to have to wait for now is for the train to actually arrive. Now, it's bringing over 100 oil. And what we can do is we can check the production over here and see how much oil it's actually going through per minute. And over here, it's saying that it will go through 12 tons of oil every minute. Will we actually have enough until our ship arrives? Maybe, maybe not. The real thing at this point, when trying to balance the oil or the power plants and whatnot, is to let one run and see how long it will run for with 400 oil in your small oil harbor at that time. This also goes into a little bit more micromanaging these particular chains here, and you want to essentially build a healthy balance when it comes to the power stations. You should not like spam these. If you spam on the power plants, number one, it's redundant to do so. Number two, you're going to go through so much oil, you're going to constantly run out and then beat your head against the wall and be like, what the heck happened, right? You do not want to run into either two of those situations. So now, this power plant is indeed working. So everybody within the green radius now has electricity. So let's take a look-see. Boom, 15 seconds. 22 seconds, I was wrong on that one. 30 seconds for you. 7 seconds for you. Perfect. This is wonderful. And now we're going to go back to Daniel's question. You now have all of this working for you, right? You have the chains essentially working. You have the window makers. The only ones that we don't have really working right now are going to be the reinforced concrete. That's not a big deal. But you want to start bringing over these resources to your islands, okay? There is one little trick that a lot of Anno players tend to do later on. If they don't fully go to build an industrial island like this, they have little pockets on different islands, right? And they do what's called passive trade. What passive trade really means is, for example, we go over here to the trade routes and we have this ship, whatever the heck the name is. I didn't even name that one. And what they do is they put 50 and of each particular construction material into the ship, and then they send it to that particular harbor, right? What's essentially happening here is that this ship is going to passively replenish your entire stockpiles on your islands, okay, for you. You can have so many of these things working. It's unbelievable. So this ship is now going to be full up with all the materials that we just put into it. And we're going to see it do so many different turns in order for that to happen. You were already in the perfect spot. I don't know why you even did that. And boom. So there's all the goods that you want to trade. And what this is essentially doing is bringing it over to Roma that's already capped with timber. But we're working on the other stuff because we're not producing it here anymore, right? It's going to passively fill up this particular island until all of the values here reach 800. And it will keep going, okay? It'll keep going until you tell it to stop. Passive trade, don't ever sleep on it, okay? That is really strong. You can go ahead and always micromanage bringing in, let's say for all intents and purposes, you need reinforced concrete. You have a whole bunch that's on your industrial island. Your ships are taking too long to get here, so you can go over there with a, I don't know, a clipper or a cargo ship and pick it up yourself. That is totally fine. But let's say for all intents and purposes, you are actually out of everything over here. Literally everything is done. You want to go to the new world, right? You don't have anything else to do here. One big thing with Anno is people tend to get very bored of one particular area very quickly. Because it's just like, oh, I gotta do this. Oh, I gotta do that. It becomes a chore after another chore. And you don't want that to happen. So while this is all happening here, right? Apparently we failed that. Maybe my ship actually... Did it sink? What the heck happened to it? I have no clue. Whatever. Quest failed. It's not like she likes us anymore anyway. So, if you're working on here, you don't have enough materials, and you want to head over to the New World, and you want to work on an island like Fenris, rest assured that your ship over there in the Old World is actually passively replenishing all of your construction materials. So by the time you're back and you want to get over there to continue working on the island that you want, you will have enough goods in there. That is really, really powerful. That's what you really want to aim for when it comes to industrial islands. Allow them to work and get the stuff that you want passively. It's kind of, I don't know how many of you guys that are watching this are into like forms of passive income, right? It's very much the same process, okay? You essentially invest your time into like certain stocks, certain products, buying and selling, and then you let it go, right? You let it go knowing in the background it's doing a lot of good work for you. You know, provided you actually played your cards right, of course. Don't do anything stupid. But that is essentially the long and short of once you actually have all of your construction materials being processed on an island like this, you can start shipping them out en masse. And look at this. These furnaces are full up of steel. There's 1,000 steel in here. You can go ahead and expand upon this easily. What we can do, actually, is probably go ahead and build one of these concrete factories so this thing can get to work. And maybe, just maybe, you won't actually see that one have electricity. That's unfortunate. But it's at a minute processing speed, so it's not too bad. We can go ahead and build maybe 2 of them up so they can at least get started. But everything else here is working fantastic. We can even go here and build up this particular steelworks. So now we have 3 of the steelworks working. We have 6 of the furnaces going. And know that the reinforced concrete is actually going to utilize the furnaces here, the steel coming from this spot as well. So the steel is going to be very important for these particular chains. And same goes with our sausages. We have 315 sausages in here, 906 pigs. They're decreasing -2 per minute, so that's not too bad. Get it? No? Okay, I get it. So you also have the canneries over here that are producing not as fast. We want to just make sure that the oil route is stable. What we can do is we can go ahead and build another oil tanker for this particular route and start it up, along with build all of these depots. So we make sure that we have the maximum amount of oil in here at any given time. Build up this second power plant and watch everything go to work. Now, what's crucial is going to be actually building the chain that's going to supply the docklands going forward, okay? If you don't have the docklands, you don't have to worry about this because you're going to be literally, for lack of better words, manually bringing in all the goods, manually producing them, which would require you to have islands devoted to just farm fields and like the livestock being pigs, cattle, stuff like that, sheep, all that stuff. But for our purposes, because we're utilizing the docklands here, we need to make sure that we actually produce the item that we're going to be trading with the most. And in this case, it's going to be the advanced weapons because we don't want to run out, okay? Running out of advanced weapons at this stage is definitely not good. And I can tell you right now that Roma does not have enough at the moment to supply this. So in the next episode, we're going to work to get this particular chain going, and we're going to make sure that our industrial island here of Ultramar has enough resources going forward. If I haven't answered a question of yours, please, please, please message it in the comments. Either I will respond to it or another one of your fellow Rantians will respond back to it. We should help one another. That's definitely a thing. We always have to help one another. That is the type of community that I want to build. A very unified one, very healthy one, everybody being respectful with one another and helping wherever possible. So if you do have questions, by all means, leave them in the comments section. I'm very, very pleased with the direction that this, the guide series has taken. It was a little bit rocky for a little bit of time, but now we are seeing a massive influx of new viewers, which is fantastic. And I definitely hope these are helping you because I definitely want to bring a fresh perspective to Anno 1800 guides. It's really important to me. So until next time, my friends, I hope you guys have a great day. Please consider like, commenting, subscribing, hit that bell button, sharing it with your friends, and I'll catch you on the next episode, my Rantians.